Welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Dean Obeidallah, and today I'm joined by a comedian who I know for many, many years, the great Maz Jobrani. You may have seen his specials on Comedy Central, on Showtime. He was part of Stephen Colbert's election night coverage, and now he's got a brand new special premiering January 28th on Peacock called Pandemic Warrior, which was filmed in Dubai, making him the first American comic to ever film a special in the Middle East, in Dubai at least there. Maz, thank you, brother. Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me, Dean. Yeah, I think I'm the first American comic to film in Dubai for sure, but not the Middle East. Other people I think have, but anyway, who cares? Let's go with it.
That's a tagline. Let's just stick with it, my friend. So you filmed this December 2019. It's coming out now on Peacock, which if people don't know, is NBC's new streaming platform. It's just some really interesting stuff on it. Tell people why you wanted to film this in Dubai, because you filmed your other specials in the States, to my understanding. Why in Dubai?
Yeah, actually, I've had a chance to film all over the world. So I filmed one special in Sweden, Stockholm, and then my last one that was called Immigrant was filmed at the Kennedy Center in DC. I filmed in LA. But as you know, when you do a special, you're like, well, it's got to be special. Something's got to be different. So I had been wanting to do a special out of the Middle East for the longest time. One big reason was to just have people watch and go, oh, wow, there's people in the Middle East watching comedy. Because even though you and I both know this, and we've been going to the region now for the past 13 years since we went with Axis of Evil in 2007, I still think there's a lot of people that don't know that. I still think that there's a lot of people, as you know, Trump was able to manipulate people by scaring them that Muslims are coming, and that led to the Muslim ban. So there is I thought, hey, what a better way than to show just a comedy show coming out of the Middle East and having people watch people from that part of the world laugh, and so that was it.
And laugh they did. It was a very funny stuff. You know, you touched on comedy in the Middle East because Maz and I were on a Comedy Central special 12, 13 years ago called Axis of Evil on Comedy Central. Then it played in the Middle East, and then you went over first in the first wave, and then I came with you afterwards. Share with people in the beginning what it was like going to a place to stand up. It has no history of stand-up comedy. They have a history of comedy, film and sketch, but not stand-up. And what were your anxieties then? What was it like?
Yeah, when we went with the Axis of Evil, it was me, Ahmed Ahmed, and Aaron Cater. And as you said, you came with us later. But when we first went in 2007, 2007 was a wild ride because this special came out on Comedy Central. You were on it as well. And I always say it was the first time you saw Middle Eastern performers on American television and we weren't killed. We were telling jokes. And so that really helped all of us in the US. And as you said, it became known in the Middle East. So we go to the Middle East and all of a sudden, I think we did like 27 sold out shows in 30 days. There was this huge buzz, and it felt like over the Atlantic, we were like, by the time we landed in the Middle East, we'd become the Beatles of that time. And it was crazy. And walk down the street, people would recognize you. They want pictures with you. In Beirut, the promoter had bought one show. He's going to do one show for 1,000 people. He ended up doing 5 shows. He added shows. So it was an amazing experience. And the most important thing was, even though I was born in Iran, I had grown up in America since I was 6 years old, and I hadn't really spent time in the Middle East until then. That's when I really went. And it was eye-opening for me because they were so welcoming and they were so friendly and there was arms wide open. And that's the big thing that I tell people, in America, a lot of times when people want to fear monger, when you hear guys like your Tom Cottons or your Mike Pompeos or your Donald Trumps, a lot of times they tell you, yeah, they're going around going, death to America. And I say, you know what? That's not the case. The 99.9% of the people in the Middle East and the Arab world are trying to live their lives. They're trying to feed their families. They're trying to, maybe have some entertainment in their lives.
Sure.
And for us to think that they're waking up and the first thought is to go, death to America. I go, you know how you sound so narcissistic that we think that they're thinking about us all the time. That's not to say there aren't bad people trying to do bad things. But unfortunately, the image that we have is the negative one. And when you go there and you see how great they are, you go, wow, more people should see this.
They're like, first we have coffee, then death to America. Come on, we don't just wake up and do death to America.
Exactly.
Feed my friend, maybe a cigarette. So you talk about in this special about dealing with the censors. And I remember the first time going to do a show in Dubai, and it was right after your big tours. They made me write my act out, like literally in hand. And then I'm like, wow, this isn't funny at all. I mean, it's arguably funny when it's performed, but on paper it wasn't. And you joke a little bit about like Kuwait. Tell people what it was like and why the powers that be had such trepidation about stand-up comedy coming to that region.
So I think, the reason I was worried about Trump, and I'm sorry to turn everything back to Trump, but he reminded me a lot of the Middle Eastern dictators, the strongmen that we'd seen, where when we first toured in the region in the Middle East, when you would show up, the promoters would say, you can talk about anything you want, but no sex, no religion, no politics. And you'd be like, well, hello and good night, or salam alaikum and alaikum salam.
Right.
But the politics meant no local politics. And I remember doing shows in Egypt. This was 2007 when Hosni Mubarak was still the president. And the promoter said, yeah, we got a call from some guy from the Ministry of Information. They're wondering, do any of you have jokes about Hosni Mubarak? And I was like, I don't think so, but why? He goes, well, they're very sensitive because a few months before we arrived, some journalist had written an article where he claimed that Hosni Mubarak looked like he was getting older, and they threw him in jail. So I was like, oh, no, we're not. We got no Mubarak jokes. Don't worry about it. But to come back, in 2020 or 2016 and have a president who doesn't go to the correspondence dinner, who says any criticism about him is fake, all of that stuff reminded me a lot of the things that we had to go through. So the censors were always afraid that you were either going to offend a leader or you were going to say something, against religion and offend somebody. So it's always been a little bit of a dance, and also depends on the countries. Like when we went to Lebanon, in Lebanon, they said, oh, do whatever you want. Like make fun of Hezbollah. I was like, no, you make fun of Hezbollah. I ain't going to kill myself here.
Right.
So it was, but all of that to say, as you said, I've had times before as well in Dubai where they said, write out your set, and I presented it. And it is a little, it's not the perfect science, because you and I both know you end up saying a lot of different things in your show than what you've written. But this time around in 2019, when I went, what had happened was Russell Peters had shown up, like, I don't know, a few months before I had. And I guess in doing his crowd work or something, he'd said something that offended somebody. And then the promoter had gotten in trouble. And then the censors had stand-up comedy back on their radar. So when I showed up, they said, give us your show. We want to look at it. And I said, oh, well, just give them my old show, because I thought they're just going to look at it. And as you said, when you handwrite your jokes, they don't read as funny. And then they go, no, we're going to translate it to Arabic. I go, well, now it's going to be even less funny. And then they told me to go, the censor wants to watch you do your show alone, like in a theater the day before. That was the first time I ever had to do that. So I literally had to go stand there. They're still building the stage. There's people on scaffoldings and they're connecting things. And there's a guy who, remember, doesn't speak English, who's sitting there across from me next to a guy who does speak English and is acting as his translator and is friends with the promoters. And as I'm walking around the stage with my script in my hand, because it's my old show, it's not the new show I'm going to do the next night, I'm walking around just telling jokes. And every once in a while, the guy translating will lean in and be like, and then the guy goes, okay. And then, and I was like, this is the craziest thing. And the funny thing is, at the end of it all, being Iranian American, I have jokes about America. I have jokes about Iran. I got jokes about my kids. Very end of it all, like the promoters, and they all go off somewhere to have a discussion. And the promoters come back. They go, he approved us. I go, great. He goes, but he said, tell him to not make fun of Iran so much. I was like, that's funny. Like he had a request.
Hey, friend, not as much Iran joke. It's, we talk about the cancel culture in America. The cancel culture in the Middle East is a little bit more, I would say, punitive. It's something like that. You're not suspended from Twitter. You're just gone. There's no PC police. There's actual police. And
yeah, you get canceled. Is like you just disappear. You just got canceled.
Oh yeah, you got canceled. Here is canceled. Like you have to apologize. And think, oh, cancel. Like, oh, it took me 3 to 5 cases. See about 5 years. When stand-up comedy first came to the Middle East, and we were doing shows, and then I produced a comedy festival in Jordan. I remember interviewed by reporters. I'm like, oh, well, we're not being political now. But I knew in the back of my head that comedy is inherently defiant. Comics are inherently anti-authority. And that comics would start to push the boundaries. And Bassem Youssef was probably the first to actually get arrested in Egypt. Now he lives in the States. We both know Bassem, known as the John Street of the Middle East. I knew that was going to come, where there'd be a time where there'd be the tension between, hey, this is a funny thing, and someone actually saying something about the leaders of that country, and they're going, ah, joke's over, buddy. You're going to
Well,
arrest you.
yeah, that's the beauty of comedy. I think you look, you go back to Lenny Bruce being arrested back in the day for breaking the law. I think as you said, we are the kid in the classroom, and the teacher has said everyone be quiet, and we can't help ourselves. We just got to say something, and we say it, and we get in trouble, and we get in trouble, and eventually that helps a society go towards free speech. And so I agree with you. We saw it firsthand with in the Middle East because I think we were all very thankful to be there. And as a matter of fact, as you know, when we went to Jordan, as did you, the King of Jordan is a fan of comedy, so he invited us over. And I remember, I believe Aaron Cater asked him. He said, we were a little worried how much we could push the envelope in our jokes here in Jordan. And the King said, listen, just by being here doing comedy, you're pushing the envelope. We're already ahead by a lot. And I'll tell you, I saw like a few years later, I was doing shows in Saudi Arabia. And back then, this was before Saudi was doing public shows. They were doing underground shows, as you remember, with Peter. And they were doing shows in consulates, in compounds, anywhere they could find kind of some privacy and make it a private party. And I remember doing a show, and there was a Saudi kid because they had a bunch of people opening for me before
Sure.
I was up. And there was a Saudi kid, and the promoter come back said, "You just keep it clean and no sex, no religion." This Saudi kid goes up, and he is just cussing like a sailor, just
Right.
left and right. And I'm backstage. I'm like, oh my God, are they gonna execute this guy? What's gonna happen? He came back. By the way, the crowd loved it. Okay, he came back. The promoter comes back. He's like, you were wonderful. That was amazing. And you realize, taking that analogy of the classroom again, we are the clowns. The kids are the ones that want to laugh. That's the general public. General public wants you to go there. They want you to
Sure.
do a risque joke, and it's the authorities that you got to stay away from. So that's the key. If you can get away without the authorities finding out, you're all right.
I think there's been this sense by people because they keep asking me, aren't you going to miss Trump for comedy? And I go, I don't think you get this. Like, what do you say to people who think that Trump has been the greatest gold mine for comics since George W. Bush was great for comedy, a different world.
Yeah.
But what do you say to people who think that Donald Trump must have been great for stand-up comedy?
I have many angles on this. The number one angle is, as comedians, we're not late night comedians with a 20-person writing staff and coming up with material every night based on what he said the day before. We're stand-up comedians. So we are trying to carve out an act that we can do for the next year, and until we put it out as a special, and then move on with our lives and start with the new stuff. Well, the problem with Trump was that every time you came up with a joke, the next day he said something crazier, and you're like, oh, now I got to do a joke about that. Now I got to do a joke about that. Now, so you couldn't keep up with the guy. It was ridiculous. The pace of it. I say it was like the game Tetris. Like we were at the bottom of a Tetris game, and he just kept coming at you, and you're like, oh my God, I gotta deal with this. I gotta deal with that. Little Rocket Man, Pocahontas, Stormy Daniels, da 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 da, storming the Capitol, da 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 da. So on and on and on and on. So I'm so happy he's gone for that reason. The second reason I'm happy he's gone is a lot of people don't realize before Trump became president, when he was just doing The Apprentice, I had a couple of innocuous jokes about his hair or something. And I would do it. You get a couple chuckles. Nobody got offended. Move on with your lives. As soon as he started saying racist stuff and ran for president, people started getting excited, and they took it personally. So when you would do a Trump joke, they would say, how dare you? So a few times, it happened several times actually, in shows where the audience would yell at me or get upset when I was doing Trump jokes, forgetting that we live in America where you're supposed to be able to make fun of the president. You should make fun of President Trump, Biden, Obama, whoever you want. That's the whole point of America. And so a lot of my shows, especially as the years went on and QAnon starts getting involved and people really think that Trump is doing some good stuff and they really are passionate about him, I started having anxiety before shows because I was like, okay, once I get to that Trump stuff, I just got to be ready. Someone's going to yell. Someone's going to yell. And it was always in the back of my mind, to the point where I would back my way into the Trump material. I would say, listen, I'm about to do some Trump jokes. Relax. He's not your
Right.
grandmother. Just relax. My own mom likes Trump. Just relax. And then I would do some Trump jokes and go. So that I'm happy to not have to deal with. And the third thing is, I'm so happy, Dean, for the past 2 weeks or whatever it is, that he has not been in the news as much as he was before. And it's
Right.
amazing to be able to actually deal with real news. Like you wake up and they're like, there's a climate disaster. You're like, yes, finally, let's get to it. There's a pandemic. Yoo-hoo, let's do it. So
So
I,
last thing. So how do you think Joe Biden's going to be? We have no idea how he'll be as president. We're getting a sense now it's a few days in and everything like that. But I wonder how it'll be if comics will go after him in earnest, or will those who didn't do politics before but did Trump jokes, just pivot away and go back to what they were doing? Because Trump transcended politics. He became everything, pop culture, the whole world. It was Trump. I wonder how it's going to be for comics to navigate in the time of Biden.
Well, listen, during Obama, there was jokes people made. I mean, not as maybe again, not at the rate that Trump was being made fun of, but there was Obama stuff, jokes, and more importantly, for someone like me who leans left, there's always going to be stuff from the right to make fun of. So whether it's your Ted Cruz's, your Josh Hawley's, an Arab getting kicked off of an airplane for speaking Arabic, I was saying, how happy was I when they were kicking white people off of airplanes? I was like, welcome to our world. And by the way, we don't cry when they kick us off. We just take it like a man and, take the bus.
Let's get some coffee and a cigarette and take the bus.
Yeah. So no, I think, and especially Biden is known for making gaffes and stuff, and there'll be plenty of material.
Let's talk about Iran, because you and I, we talk about comedy, but you're also you were born in Iran, you're Iranian heritage, and you have a lot of insight into it. First of all, we're going to have a new Iran deal. It looks like, should American, for our negotiators, get some like Middle Easterners on our side to negotiate? Like, you don't need like these white guys. You need Middle Easterners. They're going to go back and forth, a lot of screaming, yelling, and coughing, crying. That's what we need. That's what we want to make a good deal. But
listen,
go ahead.
If our guys are not saying my friend, then they're dust. You got to say my friend. You got to really work that in there.
Bring in some presents for them. Like, here's for you, your wife, everybody. I'm not going to judge.
Keep bringing tea. Be like, okay, have a tea. We talk. Finish the tea, then we talk. No, I'm all for diplomacy, and a lot of Iranians get upset at me when I say this, because a lot of Iranians in the West, the diaspora, even some Iranians in Iran are so sick of the Islamic Republic of Iran because it's such an oppressive government that they just want someone to take a magic wand and get rid of them. And that's what Donald Trump claimed he could do. Mm-hmm. He kept saying, I'm going to get a better deal. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And if you look at a lot of the stuff that Trump said, a lot of it was just empty promises, because you sit there and you go, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get Mexico to pay for the wall? When is infrastructure coming? How are you going to get this new health care? How? And Iran was one of those things. So a lot of Iranians started to support Donald Trump because they thought he was going to get rid of the mullahs, especially when he killed Soleimani. They thought, oh, look at that. He's a tough guy. He killed Soleimani. Soleimani was a bad guy. But the problem with the way they went about getting rid of Soleimani was there was no next step to the plan. It's like breaking into the bank and going, okay, now what? Did you bring the bags? Oh, you didn't bring bags? How are we going to carry out the money? And that's basically what they did with Soleimani. They're like, let's kill Soleimani. Okay, now what? And then they're like, oh, now war? And so I just basic logic, all right? We have been enemies with Iran for 40 years, and it hasn't worked. Our buddy Jason Rezaian just wrote an article, an op-ed piece in the Post about how the past 4 years of the Trump-Pompeo policy have just hardened the Iranian leadership. There's been, they killed a lot of people in protests over there. They've imprisoned more people. Granted, the sanctions have probably crippled some of their overseas operations. But that said, they're still as oppressive as before. And more importantly, the people of Iran now are suffering from the sanctions. So I've always been open to let's try diplomacy for 5 years, 10 years. Let's see how it goes. I don't like the government there either, but let's see how it goes, because I believe the philosophy behind the Iran deal was, let's bring them into the fold, the
Mhm.
international fold.
Right.
And then once they get a taste of how good it is for their economy to be dealing with companies from the West, at that point, if they continue to do human rights violations, or they do, or they, they're starting wars, or carrying out acts of terror, then you have a big negotiating tool to tell them, guys, if you keep doing that, we're going to have to pull out.
Right.
So I'm all for trying to open up the Iran deal again, and seeing if we can somehow bring a little more prosperity to the people of Iran, and also to bring a little more freedom and democracy to the people, because they're the ones suffering, really.
Well, you've just brought more humanity to the Iranian people than we see generally in our media for years, to be blunt about it, just talking about them as fellow humans. In your comedy, you talk about being Iranian, you also talk about being, immigrant parents coming in and what they're doing. But you're an immigrant. You think your kid's going to make fun of you? Like my immigrant dad comes in wearing his Oakland A's hat, doesn't even know what the A's are. There's the big headphones. Because you think honestly, you think your kids, as they get older, are going to be telling similar stories, although it'll be more subtle, that because you do bring the immigrant experience, even though you were raised here, you came here, hell, like 6, 7 years old, or 10, 11, I can't remember right now.
Yeah, I was 6 when I came. And listen, my parents were like immigrant. Like, they didn't
Right.
speak English. They had to learn. And so there was a lot of, looking back, because a lot of what comedy is, what comedians do is, we almost do like a self-reflection or self-analysis from the past. Because you sit there and you go, why was I doing that? Oh my God, my mom used to hit me. That's right. Or what, why was I so embarrassed about my parents? Oh yeah, my dad used to be really loud, and he would just embarrass the hell out of me. I mean, that's all that stuff. And I talk about it in the special, where I had a lot of friends whose like white parent would show up, and they were just buttoned up and very quiet, and, hi, how are you? I'm here for Brock's parent teacher meeting. Okay, I'll be waiting over there. And my dad would be like, hello, thank you very much. We're happy to be here. This is my son. Like, he's just loud and
Right.
immigrant-y. So obviously, I think kids, if you're going to get into the world of comedy, you're inspired by a lot of what happened to you as a child. And I look at what my kids are going through sometimes, and I do think about, because they both love comedy. They've been, they've been binging 30 Rock. They love Saturday Night Live. They'll listen to all the Netflix comedy stations, and yours. But I sit there sometimes, and things that happen, I go, oh my God, that if they go into comedy, that's going to work its way in there. So for example, my wife is an immigrant from India. Like, she moved to America when she was 6 months old. And when it comes to academics, she's very traditional, and like, let's get it, let's go. You got to make sure you get, good study skills, this, that, the other. So every time, like, she'll sign them up for some extracurricular study class, I'm thinking to myself, okay, when these kids grow up and they're doing stand-up comedy, they're gonna be like, while the other kids got to go to whatever it is, swim camp, I had to go to square root camp or whatever it is. I mean, I could totally see them talking about it. And
You'd be
with
like, your
me,
kid, you're welcome. I just gave you 5 minutes. All right. It's
yeah,
like,
well,
they give you your first 5 minutes of material. Here you
well,
go.
with
The
me,
night show today.
the thing they make fun of is, every time my son asks me a question, I start waxing poetic. Like, he'll be like, Daddy, why is it, like, how does it rain? I go, well, son, rain in historically speaking. And then he's like, I just want the question, or give me your phone and I'll Google it.
So, Maz, great seeing you, my friend, and congratulations on the brand new special.
Thanks for having me. And I just want to let people know the reason it was called Pandemic Warrior. It was originally Peaceful Warrior when we filmed it in Dubai.
Uh-huh.
But then once the new year, like, I left Dubai going, great, I'll take this home in 2020, I'll sell it, and I'm off to the races. This is gonna be great. I got a tour coming up.
Right.
Life is gonna be 2020 is my year. And then it was lockdown. And so then some specials came out during lockdown, and I would try to watch them, and it looked like they'd been filmed on Mars, because there was people in a crowd sitting next to each other. The comedian was doing jokes about the traffic. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? So that's when I realized, okay, if I'm going to put my special out now that we're under a new world, I need to do maybe 3 or 4 minutes at the top
You did.
from, yeah, how comedy is now, which is like out of a closet.
Right.
And that's why I called it Pandemic Warrior. I do it like that. So people, I hope they check it out. And also, I'm going to plug one more thing. check out my podcast, Back to School with Maz Jobrani. I got to have you on it, Dean. I bring
Sure.
on people that are experts in different fields,
I'm not
and
an
we get
expert
to
in
talk
anything.
about stuff.
Problem.
What-
I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, as my mom tells me. But well, Maz, thanks for being on Salon Talks. I really appreciate it, and the special is great. I hope people check it out. Pandemic Warrior on Peacock. Take care, brother.
Dean, you still have great hair.
Thank you. It's a gift from my parents. I have nothing to do with it. Take care, brother.